This is Common Sense Generation. Common Sense Generation. Hello everyone, my name is Kądzielska-Koper and you are watching Common Sense Generation. And I have with me in the studio two amazing guests, Agnieszka Piekarska from Prom Ministry, sociologist, and also privately the wife of a pastor.
Yes.
And Matthew Paschall, who came here from Hungary, but is originally American, executive leadership team for Refugee Highway Partnership. Mm-hmm. Both of you, thank you very much for coming. And what unites us today and what is our topic for today's discussion is the aid for Ukraine, and the fact that we have a ongoing conflict behind the border of Poland, which affects definitely Europe, but I would say it affects the whole world. Mm-hmm. And both of you are united in helping and somehow engaged in bringing aid to the Ukrainians. But before we start talking about how you help, Matthew, let's start with you. Tell us a little bit your background when it comes to giving aid to refugees. What you're doing.
Yeah. So thank you for having me. And I grew up in California, is my home state, and my wife and I didn't know I'd be working with refugees later in my life, but we moved to Budapest, Hungary, in the middle of 2015, which was kind of the middle of the Syrian war, the civil war, and also the instability of Afghanistan and many other countries in the Middle East following the Arab Spring. So by the time we came to Europe, there was over 400,000 people went through Budapest on foot and by train. So I thought, this is a new Europe. I wasn't expecting this kind of experience. And so I quickly decided I need to actually understand this from the cause of migration and also some of the solutions, and how do faith-based groups and governments and social work together to answer a really complex problem. I also changed my doctorate to focus on multicultural leadership and how this migration of people into Europe is creating some great challenges, but also great opportunities to learn from one another and to see how the movement of people, we live in a global world, people come by choice and by force all the time. And so I don't think it's just our generation that's going to be dealing with this. I think it's a reality of the modern world. And so I changed my dissertation to really study migration and the impact on faith communities, the impact on leadership and organizations, and the impact actually, if we can do things well, how we can be even a solution back in the countries where these people are migrating from. So anyway, that's a little of my journey. So I've been involved with refugee work for the last 9 years.
That's a lot of time, and right now we're facing the war in Ukraine. Agnieszka, and you are based in Poland. You're Polish, but I know that also through the church you're working and you're leading, along with your husband, you started the Center of Helping Refugees, which is sort of very important here in Poland, which is on the border of the free world. So tell us.
It's a little bit different story because I think we never thought we were going to be working with refugees. At Prime Ministries, we also have and had, before even the war, a few Ukrainians that are working with us on staff. So, of course, they have their families, their friends in Ukraine. And I remember it very, very well. When the war broke out on Thursday, on February 24th, we had first phone calls to our center if we could take some families in. Sunday, same week, the first service, we already had 25 people that came from Ukraine to our center. The capacity of our center was 220, but I think we didn't expect it will be full so quickly, but in a week, of course, it was full. And then we had to work with different organizations from all over Europe, from Holland, from Switzerland, from Germany, a lot of different people from mostly through Lausanne movement. And it was big help for us because they were taking people and we could take more people from the border. And our guys, the Ukrainian guys, they're working with us. They were going nonstop to the border, back and forth, and bringing people, bringing families, bringing friends. So it was for us, I would say there was even no question if we will help. It just happened. And that was the start.
And right now we are having the second anniversary of the beginning of the war, at least the second phase of this war, because we know it started in 2015, but the full-scale conflict is right now. And a lot of people, especially in the West, think, okay, it's over, let's freeze it somehow. But still there are a lot of refugees coming, and especially from who lived already those 2 years and experienced the war. So Matthew, tell us, how does it look in Hungary, and how do you see this from this 2 years, this change of refugees?
Yeah, so as an American living in Hungary, I don't know if I'm an expert on Hungarian policy and news and that kind of things, but I have lived through the last 9 years in the city and tried to be a collaborator and to connect people that live in Budapest, live in Hungary, including Hungarian Baptist Aid and other NGOs that have a long-term credibility in the country. I have gone across the border into the Transcarpathia area, the Hungarian-Ukraine border, gone on the other side, raising funding, connecting volunteers. I would say at the beginning of the conflict, Hungary actually really opened their arms, and they opened their schools, they opened buildings, and they were really, there was actually a really a fresh spirit that I thought, this is really an opportunity. But as an outsider, again, I'm not an insider, I think that there was a short amount of patience, like thinking this is a short-term commitment. And as the war dragged on, and as economics pressures came into play, I saw people more and more saying, you need to find another solution, another place. And I remember talking to one, she was actually an immigration lawyer in Hungary. And I said to her, why is it that many people are sort of tired now of refugees? And she says, well, we in our history, Hungarians have sort of had our own history of pain and suffering. And I just don't have that much room in my heart for carrying the suffering of others. That was her. I thought that was really interesting from a lawyer. I didn't know when I was talking to her. I said, what do you do for work? She said, I'm an immigration lawyer. I said, oh, aren't you supposed to help people that are trying to find asylum and safety? She says, yeah, but personally, I just don't have room in my heart, that much room. So I think that's what I'm seeing is there was an initial openness, but now is more closed. That's my after 2 years.
Well, that's definitely usually the case when the war is going right now for such a long time, and we don't really see the end of it. Even here in Poland, we as well see that people are tired a little bit of what's with help at certain level, and when there comes to everyday life, when you have to accept other people and the other person nationalities to live with us and share everyday life, when it is sharing jobs, it is sharing certain opportunities. But it's of course also a huge opportunity, not only a challenge, but an opportunity to bring people when they bring their skills and they want to work, and most of the Ukrainians want to work. We see this in Poland. Agnieszka, how do you see this? Because the war is 2 years, and we have still a lot of refugees coming, and right now those are usually the most traumatized because they've seen a lot of war. How do you help them in your center?
I think, like to say a little bit for what you've said, Matt, before, I think all of it caught us off guard a little bit. I mean, we thought we know how to deal. I'm trained. I'm a therapist. I'm a psychologist. Okay. So from the beginning, I kind of knew what to do. But at the same time, I got myself also like, okay, I'm done. Enough. I just cannot function. I'm coming home and I'm bringing it home to my kids, to my family. It cannot be like this. So even myself, I had to set some boundaries, and that was very helpful. We have a very, very, very wise boss that really set the boundaries for us even, and said, no, you don't take any people home, because we were ready. Okay, we have to take family home. No, because you have like 300 people every day to take care of. And that was very, very, very smart. And we're so thankful to him. But the beginning was kind of easy, like 2 months, 3 months, everybody was very still energized, and people in neighborhood and people in our school, since we also lead a Christian school in our city, parents were coming with stuff, with money, with everything we need. And then, as you said, people get tired of it because they have their own lives. It's so much different right now. I wouldn't say it's like people are not willing to help. It's just, for us, I think it's time to think about a different approach, how to help, because it is long term and nobody was really ready for it. And people coming now, you're right, they are more traumatized, that's for sure. Some of them, they went home for some period of time and they came back. Some of them left with families and they lived there. And like for us in our help center, we have around 40 to 50 people, depends when they're, moving back and forth. But they are not, they are in a safe place, but at the same time, they're constantly on their phones, on social media, on Messenger with the families, and they get the pics, the films, the videos from the Kiev, Kherson, and different places. So they are constantly on war.
This is Common Sense Generation. If you like this channel, please subscribe, share, and comment. Your voice really matters. Yeah, I've seen the same thing in the shelter, which Foundation for the Eyes of Heaven are running here in Warsaw. So especially children are sitting on the phone constantly, and they are like with their body, they are here in Poland in a safe country, but they are not starting life here because with their soul and with their mind, they are still out there. And I even saw an 8-year-old boy who was all the time looking at the map of Ukraine and checking which part of Ukraine currently is under danger of bombing. And he was showing his mother, okay, our region is right now in danger. So he was all the time thinking, what's there back home? What's going on? But on the other hand, what I saw with children who already are staying more than 2 years or a year, then they say they love Poland and they love our schools and they want to stay here, even when the war is going to end.
And there's also, there's a big difference between kids that stay online in Ukrainian schools and the kids that went to schools, like in real schools in Poland. We see a huge difference. And those kids, they're trying to, get new friends, go to school. They speak Polish fluently right now. They're so much better off, so much better.
But this is a new world in which, first of all, even if the war ends, we don't know with what sort of outcome, but we will have in the Western world the minorities of Ukrainians here in Europe, but also in US and Canada, who need to find their space and in the societies. With this, how do you think? How do you think they're going to? Where is the place for them, and how to? Because I mean, the aid somehow need to stop somewhere for them to become independent. Is there, Matthew, in Hungary, or what you see with refugees? Are they becoming at a certain point independent? Is this way, or not really?
Well, the majority of Ukrainians that stayed in Hungary, excuse me, were ones that actually were culturally and linguistically already spoke Hungarian. So they lived in the border region. So for them, learning or putting their kids into Hungarian school was not a huge challenge. But majority of Ukrainians that had strong businesses, or maybe their kids spoke zero Hungarian, they really weren't. I mean, it's a tough language to start, and the future is very limited if you try to start your new life in Hungary. So really, Hungary is more of a transit country. They pass through. We had families stay with us for days, but they were planning to go to Spain or Germany, and one family actually made it to North Carolina, and we helped connect them to some mutual friends of ours. So it's, Hungary has some challenges for like really long-term resettlement. So I think what happened mainly I think there was 75,000 that decided to stay. That was the last number that I heard. It might be a little bit higher. 75,000 came across the border and resettled, mostly from Hungarian regions, and the majority just passed through. So it wasn't like Poland that had close to 1 million. I mean, you had the 2014, 2015 migration. Then you had another migration, which added. And because of language, it was easier. It was easier and closer to your home country.
Absolutely.
So Poland carried the biggest weight of this migration than any other neighboring country. And so I think that's why it's good to talk about this, because I don't think other countries felt that weight. They didn't feel it in 2014 and 15. They really struggle understanding the weight of it when they're across the ocean or 1,000 kilometers away. They just don't. But this is your neighbor, and you have a war next door. So
and this is also a moment of when truly Poland is the border of free world, because Ukraine, with this huge influence of Russia, I don't know if you agree with me, but definitely this war made the new nation, this nation to unite strongly as it was never before. And they are very much, they are very in favor of unity and with their own identity. But this Russian influence over the whole region it's huge, still huge, and it's not a good influence. And in this way that especially a lot of people in UK and a lot of people in US are romanticizing their view of Russia, and they see Russia through Pushkin and Dostoevsky, but it's not there anymore. I mean, this is a huge minority of intellectuals, which we see through this lenses, but the everyday life in Russia is a gray life of people who are under huge influence, political influence. They do not live a free life at all, and this dream of huge empire is something which they keep them together to sacrifice everyday life. But it's still going on, and I don't know, of course, what the future brings. But if the West doesn't understand it, then definitely I think that at least Ukraine, but this part of Europe might be in a very difficult situation.
Yeah, it's interesting. Speaking as an American, you have a lot of conservative, it was very strange, conservative alliance and softness towards a dictatorship that for the last, it's my generation. I'm 55 years old. I still remember the walls falling down. I was in college my freshman year in University of California, and I stopped going to class. I was just watching the world change. I did not go to class. I had teachers who were socialists and communists in my university. I'm like, look at what's happening. Like, it's nice to think that we can all share and be at the same level, but these people are miserable. I remember listening to Lech Walesa and these, maybe I'm not the normal American, but I really like, even though it seemed far away, another country, another land, another continent, for me, it was my history to say, freedom, your identity, the ability to think for yourself, these are values that go beyond, they go beyond oceans, and it's like a basic human right to say, I get to think what I want to think. I get to be my own person. I get to, and it wasn't about American freedom. It's not even an American idea. I think it is a universal that we should have the ability to express ourselves, to be our own person, and to have meaning in life. And I watched basically a government system collapsing, the fall of the Soviet Union. And it actually was so motivating to me that when I finished my university, our church in California organized one of the first student groups to go to Novosibirsk in 1992. I was like so ready because I wanted to go to this. We called it the evil empire, I wanted to go to
adventure.
Yeah. And it was such an amazing experience for me to be on campuses with other students in physics and nuclear physics and mathematics and all kinds of very smart intellectual people. And we were in a place called Akademgorodok, which was this academy town of all the intellects of Russia, and just having discussion, open, honest discussion about what is the meaning of life, what is our identity, who is God, like things that they were not able to talk about. And fast forward now, 55 years into the present, to hear my same government and many people, family members even, like talk about Russia in a different way. It's like, are you not a student of history? Like what happened between 1989 and 2024? And I think that's going to be a very interesting, for historians, sociology, every kinds of things, is to say, what were the shifts under the ground that made people come into this kind of it's incongruent. It's not lining up with our core values, our beliefs about freedom, our identity. How did we get so out of sync? And I don't even know the answer to all of that. But I still feel that, I wish, like I tell my kids, I have 4, like the history of what happened in the Holocaust is important. We took them on holiday to Auschwitz. Now, some people, why would you do that for a holiday? For me, history is important. I want my kids to know what happened in the past and how should we be as people in the present. And the same thing, I took my children to refugee camps because I wanted them to know the stories of people running from war, running from dictatorships and regimes, running from ecological and environmental disasters. There's all kinds of reasons why people come. And because I wanted my kids to not follow the flow of politic and of media and culture, I want them to think for themselves, what is their values and what kind of person do they want to be? And so that's just me as a parent talking. But I think it's interesting for faith leaders, for political leaders. There's going to be a day of reckoning. We'll look back at this moment in history, like we look back to the 30s and 40s. And we're going to say, where were we in history when all of this shifting happened with the Syrian crisis and what was happening in the Middle East, and then the Euro crisis and what was happening economically, and then COVID and all of these things, and the invasion of Ukraine. I think we're going to look back and say, were we being honest and true to our values, or did we get, I don't know if it's propaganda, but did someone insert some beliefs that maybe made us compromise?
Or just focus on everyday life instead of focusing on the bigger picture.
So anyway, that's a long thing, but I'm still trying to understand, how did we get here globally?
Agnieszka, but I would say that because you represent also this Polish perspective, which is in this case, I would say very in this case, Poland, it shows a lot of common sense when it comes to understanding Russia. And even though you remember how it was before 1989, and you see how Poland developed and how it's part of the Western world right now, but we have it still in this back of our minds that a life in communism, it's not as it is as Orwell said and described, and not as a lot of people who are romanticizing about it in US.
Yes.
And right now, with Ukraine, who's still very much in their mentality in those times, they had huge problems with corruption. They had many ways things are done there as they were done in the Soviet Union. They suddenly we see this, I would say, two worlds meet, and they meet on the soil of Poland. How do you see this when you see refugees, and how do you see also it through the Ukrainian children?
I think it's also very important to set politics aside for a moment and see the real people. We had people coming with families, and they were telling us the stories that we couldn't believe. Like people coming from Kherson, calling their friends in Russia and talking. Do you hear? They're bombing in. No. It cannot be true. No. What you're talking? Our television says something different, and literally friendships were torn apart. So this is also the state that they are living in it, and they came here, and it turned out they lived in the same country, but then some of them speak Ukrainian, some of them speak Russian, and there is another tension, not only another culture that came into, but also, so I have to be now worried about my language. Russian was my language my whole life, and I lived in Ukraine. Why should I worry? Well, you should maybe learn Ukrainian because you live in Ukraine. This is so complex. It's just even hard. I think if it's even for us, hard to comprehend. And for kids also living in a state of mind like this, and parents, talking about it and stuff. I think this is very painful, this one thing. And I have no idea how is it to solve, because it's just generations and it's history. And of course, as you know, Polish Ukrainian history is also hard and painful. But I would say in the moment that we heard about war, something happened in this nation that was like click and okay, forget it.
I do think it as well. There's a new opening,
especially young people. I would say, of course, because we don't have this, in mind as our, grandparents, for example, what happened during war. So maybe it's a little bit easier, but still, it's just different mindset. And now, where to go with this? I think it's it's always. Gospel is helpful for us because it's like you do for one what you would do for all. And I think that's the main focus for us. Don't worry about everything that it cannot be changed, because we can always say, well, just do nothing, because no, it's
just drop into the ocean.
It's just unsolvable. I mean, you cannot do anything about it. Do something for these little ones, for older ones. People we have in our center, we have not only moms with kids, we have a lot of older people. They have no place to go back to. They have no jobs. They're retired. And many of them are sick. Some people came here and they found out they have cancer. They had to go and cure. So it's just a lot of daily things that are happening, just same with us. So.
Yeah, there's this one thing that Poland also took all terminal illness people and all children who had cancer from Ukraine to Poland, which is not even well known to Polish people. Sometimes relocate them to Polish hospitals or to relocate them further to Italy or other places. But this is, of course, the case. Just to, I would say to wrap up this conversation, because we're running from time. So is it good to summarize the thing that, well, we cannot help everyone, we cannot change the history, but we can change the everyday life, this one thing today, and we can help at least a few individuals. Is it true?
Yeah, in Jesus's ministry 2,000 years ago, he was approached by a lawyer, and the lawyer asked him, how do I live this life, this kingdom life? How do I have eternal life? And his answer was simple. He said, love the Lord your God with your heart, your soul, and your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. So the good lawyer says, well, who is my neighbor? He wanting to kind of excuse himself from the responsibility of the neighbor. And then he told the story of the Good Samaritan, which many, this story, where the hero is actually the foreigner, taking care of the person in need. And Jesus said, who was the good neighbor? He said, the one showing mercy. That story was a real life story of someone wrestling with, how do I love my neighbor? I think that the church in global and even countries living next to a war happening is wrestling with the same question. Who is my neighbor? And how do I love my neighbor as myself? We have a lot of countries in Europe and in the States saying the most important thing is loving ourselves. America first, or whatever first. And I think we're losing the basic values of what it means to really have faith and to live a meaningful life, to contribute to, as a global citizen. We're a global world, and our idea of neighbor isn't just the one across the border. What happens across an ocean, what happens in Ukraine, what happens in Poland, should matter to people in America, to Canada. We can't just say our neighbor is the one that we can drive to. And so that's the challenge of, I think, if Jesus were to here in 2024 and he were to go to your camp, taking care of elderly and women, or he was to come to your foundation working with the kids, he would speak to your staff and say, the bottom line is you have to love your neighbor as you love yourself, the same. You don't love more, you don't love less. And I just feel like we have a lot of heroes that have come out of this migration. Yes. Some of the heroes are the refugees themselves who have said, I'm gonna do the little things to give back to those who've been good to me. I'm gonna take the mercy that people have shown to me, and I'm going to show mercy to others. And I think that's going to be, hopefully, the story is not finished yet.
Absolutely, the story is not finished.
But
I do hope this chapter will be rewritten at least, but people like you, for example, and let's wish it, and we have an international group here. And I do hope this topic of war and the war with Ukraine will be still an international problem for everyone to see and hope to face it. So thank you very much for sharing this. And I do keep my fingers crossed for everything what you're doing. And to all the viewers of Common Sense Generation, I thank you very much for watching, and I do hope that you see the perspective of refugees of war in Ukraine, of this part of the world, but also the fact that this is our common responsibility to address this war, the problem, and to help people which are next to us. And I want to thank Polish National Foundation for making this podcast possible. Thank you for watching. This is Common Sense Generation. Common Sense Generation.